Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. And today I'm delighted to be joined by SUNI ZMICH. ZMICH. I practiced it yesterday, and I don't know whether I got it.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Okay,
yes.
I'm not going to go another way. SUNI and I had a conversation yesterday. Really enjoyed it. So you're in for a real treat. SUNI is a great lady, a fellow adoptee, and I don't know if you've noticed, listeners, I've been trying to get more adoptees on the show, and we seem to be really coming up. I was going to say we're coming up trumps, right? But I can't really use that Trump word anymore. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. So SUNI has written. Wow, she's writing a new book, but she's written one already, and she's prolific, right? So this book here, I've got it. She sent me a copy delightfully. It's like 350 pages of fantastic interviews with people involved in the people from the adoption triad constellation, however you like to call it. And she's also, so each chapter features her interview with a different person, and there's the last chapter of the book is hers, and it's the only one that I've found time to read so far, and she knows that, so I'm not ambushing her. There was one sentence that really leapt out for me in that chapter, and so SUNI and I agreed that would be the starting point for the conversation. So I'm wondering whether to go for some sort of Shakespearean vibe. I'm not a voiceover guy. Let me just go for it. So, allowing myself. Oh, that's great, isn't it? Nobody's wrong all day. And somebody ringing me from Albania. Who do I know in Albania? I don't know anybody in Albania. Okay, so not a very professional session today, really, is it? But anyway, we'll go straight into it. Allowing myself to look directly at my pain enabled me to unclench as the fire died down. Allowing myself to look directly at my pain enabled me to unclench as the fire died down. So, yeah, what was the fire?
Well, the fire was absolutely the adoption trauma, whether I consciously or did not acknowledge it.
Yeah. So this whole thing of conscious versus unconscious fascinates me, right? Absolutely fascinates me. I was thinking about that this morning. I was thinking about you as this morning, and as I was swimming, and I was thinking of that, the primal wound. If we consider for a moment, we think that it exists. It heals over with the scar, and then it heals over with the scab, and then the scab's ripped back. Maybe that's the way that it looks, and it comes from the subconscious into conscious. How do you? That's a new way I've come up of looking at it. How does it look to you?
Well, I think from what I've observed and from my own experience, that we all definitely have a private primal wound. Now, it doesn't have to be terminal, but we all have it. And some of us carry it like a badge, and some of us bury it. But until you acknowledge its existence, I don't think you can heal. And I think that's where that sentence came from, because you have to look at it, and you have to feel it. and go through all of the steps and corners and crevices of that pain until, but if you don't, you can't heal because it will surge up again.
Yeah. Yeah. So a quote came to mind, and I think I used it a couple of weeks ago. I think it's Jung, and he says, until we make the subconscious conscious, it will run our life, and we will call it fate. So yeah, allowing myself to look directly at my pain. So this is like, is this a magnifying glass? We're putting a magnifying glass, and we're looking directly at the pain rather than numbing it or avoiding it or squashing it down, or what else do we do with pain? What do else do we do with pain? We numb it, we dismiss it,
we run from it.
We run from it.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, absolutely. It is a magnifying glass. And I've tried probably everything you just mentioned, the numbing it, the pushing it down. I've certainly run from it. And part of the time I didn't know I was doing it. So it was definitely subconscious. Yeah. I took a creative poetry class in college, and we had to keep these dream journals and turn them into the professor. And what she said at the end of her comment section when I got my journal back, she said that you should probably try to figure out why you're so angry. And I had no idea. I was so angry, but clearly it was coming out in my subconscious, in my dreams. And then it took another few decades for me to look at it again.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Because I think we're all, as one of my mentors says, it's hard to see the picture when we're in the frame. Like, we're not very good judges of our own stuff, because we've been living with it for so long. It's normal. It's how life looks to us. It's how we feel. It's our status quo, isn't it? It's our normal level.
Yes. I think that's really interesting that you would say that, because it wasn't until I started interviewing everyone within the adoption triad for my book that I started to get this bigger picture. And I wasn't originally going to put my own story in there. I didn't think that it was relevant. I was just going to put everyone else's. So I started to collect all these stories and ended up with 34 stories. And then it made me realize that we're all connected somehow. We all share the pain in some way. And we're at different levels of awakening or not. Some people were still in it. And so until I realized that I needed to look at my own, I couldn't heal. And ultimately, it was the birth mothers that ended up leading me to healing.
Yeah. So I guess another way of expressing what I said and what you said together may be to look at like an anger gauge. So considering instead of a thermometer, instead of a thermometer, we have an angerometer. Yeah. Or a woundometer.
Okay.
And different people are at different levels at different times, right? They'll have you know, that it's a like, so it's that scale, that angerometer goes up and down all the day, but it's going within a range. And different people have different ranges. So,
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Have you heard of a guy called David Hawkins?
No.
He's in 2 words, he's a spiritual teacher, or he was a spiritual teacher. And I often name check him on there on the podcast, because he's created a scale of human consciousness. So the scale of human consciousness is another, like a thermometer, and it goes from 0 to 1,000, and 0 is dead, and shame is 20, and I think anger's about 50 or 80, something like that. Anything, the unconditional love, like the unconditional love of a mother for the child, is about 450. And the great religious avatars, including Jesus and Buddha and people like that, are at 1,000.
Okay.
And anything below 200 is life detracting, and anything above 200 is life supporting. So for me, it's a great way of looking at an angerometer in perhaps a broader context, where we're looking at where we're at, and what area what area we're coming from. So, and I think that the standout fact for me is the low level of shame. Shame is 20 and 0 is dead. It's like, that's how debilitating shame can be. And it's so debilitating, we don't stay in there very long. It's because it's not great, and we'll often get anger as a response because it feels better than shame. It feels kind of more empowered than shame. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. The anger, it makes sense that it's a step above the shame, because the anger gives you control, or at least you feel like you have control over your life. It's shackles, but you definitely, if you're angry at something else, then you seemingly have control over your own destiny, I guess. You want to,
yeah, more control, definitely more control than shame, and we're pushing it away, aren't we? If we're pointing it outwards, so we're projecting our anger onto something else.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Anger could be, shame projected outwards. Right. So we no longer are directing it towards ourselves, and we no longer feel like the victim, but because, something else or someone else is the perpetrator. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that for me, that scale, and the book that he describes the scale in is called Power versus Force. So it seems to me that me reading that scale had a similar effect as you doing the interviews with the 34, 33 others, would it? You and 33. Is that how it was? Or was it
34 stories of adoption? Yeah, 34 stories plus me.
Plus you. Okay. So yeah. So what you had is a way of your conversations were a gauge of those 34 different people's, where those people were at on the day that you spoke to them. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And even if they were below 200 on this scale, they helped push me into the 200 range. And just by looking at their stories too, you know, looking at other people's lives, really, I don't know, just finding the commonality. Somehow, weirdly so, there's comfort in finding that other people have shared the same trauma, even though their stories, some of their stories are very sad or tragic, and some not so much, but it just depends. But looking at that and seeing that somehow there's comfort knowing that other people have experienced what you have.
Yeah, we're not alone, and we're not going mad.
Well, speak for yourself.
Yeah, we're not. There's, yeah, and as I was thinking about this morning, like, and the you know, the primal wound or the anger, as you know, I'm not going mad. It's not me, you know. It's not me. It's not about me. It's about what happened to me. I am. What do people say? This is a normal reaction to an abnormal event.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And other people have been through that. I'm not alone. And so initially there's a relief there. And for me, reading the primal wound, it can actually then become, it can shift from relief to being debilitating, or holding, not debilitating, that's probably too strong a word, holding me back. I felt it was something that I was kind of saddled with. But you didn't feel like that, did you?
I didn't at all. So when I read the primal wound, it just blew my mind. I felt like she might have been writing about me, which is crazy, right? So the whole time I'm reading, I was just gobsmacked at how accurate it was. But for me, yes, there was relief, but there was also an explanation as to why I had behaved like I had for decades, you know. Goodness, I think an explanation is very helpful, but it doesn't mean that we have to stay in that space. Once you have that explanation, then you can move on and say, okay, this is why I am this way, but you don't have to stay there.
Yeah. I thought it, my reaction, my instant reaction was the same as yours, but my secondary reaction was different, I think. So I thought, like you, I thought this explains everything. But whereas you went to it, okay, so I'm going to move on. My next phase was, oh, I'm saddled with it. And so I went through a bit more of I'm saddled with it before I then was moving on with it. I feel like I could have left it behind. So it sounds like my journey took a couple of just a slower turn at it.
Maybe I don't know, but I think feeling saddled is okay as well. And because sometimes people have to sit in that space and feel it. You know, it's not a race, is what I always tell my daughters. You know, life is not a race. We're all gonna get to our destination eventually. And I don't know that it was faster because I didn't look at my adoption until I was in my 50s.
Yeah.
And so I ignored it for many years. And I was in a profession that really wasn't me for all these years. I used to be an accountant / financial manager, and I played in that arena. And for me, it was actually very helpful because it was very orderly. And so I didn't have to look at anything emotional, and I stayed away from looking at anything too deep internally. So it just was very orderly, and the cadence of that profession helped me stay afloat and not completely drown in my sorrow, right? And so the primal wound, when I finally read it in my 50s, it was like, oh, okay, so I get it now.
Yeah.
And then so I was already at the place where I was able to turn. But so you stayed in that place for longer. That's okay, but you probably looked at it sooner than I did. So
I was it was 8 years ago. So I was in my 40s. I'm 55 now, and I think this is a spooky thing. You might have seen this on the post I've got out there for this Eventbrite, the Eventbrite webinar. It's called Whole: Healing My Primal Wound, and we'll probably try and get this podcast out before it goes out. It is. I ordered the Primal Wound the day before my 47th birthday or something like that. It's like, and it arrived. I don't know whether I looked at it actually on my birthday, but that's the day I ordered it, the 3rd of January. What did you learn from the different people in terms of, you talked about the healing coming from the birth mums? Was that your healing coming from there? Was that your most significant benefit? Was that the most significant thing for you from the interviews, doing the interviews, writing the stories?
Yes. That's a very succinct answer, but absolutely yes. I originally was going to write the book about adoptees and pull in some adoptive parents, but because I was very short-sighted when I started my project, it didn't even occur to me that birth mother stories needed to be included. And then somebody referred a woman to me, and we set up an interview, and I agreed that we agreed that we would meet at a certain time. And then as soon as we started the interview, I realized that she wasn't an adoptive mother, that she was a birth mother. I thought she was an adoptive mother, but she was so genuine and so sweet, and the pain, it was probably close to 40 years ago that she had chosen adoption, and the pain was still so fresh, and she completely changed me. Just in that moment, I realized that her pain came first, because I thought, short-sightedly, I thought that the adoption story started when I was adopted, but it didn't, because before that, I had another story before my adoptive parents came into the picture. And even before I came into this world, there was another story before that, and that was that of my birth mother. And this woman just completely changed the course of everything. So I have a whole section in my book about birth mothers. And their stories and their words were the ones that ultimately allowed me to heal.
Yeah. So you used the word realized, but it sounds bigger than that. To me, it sounds like a bit like one of those Charlton Heston moments, when the scales fall off his eyes. Is that a religious? I don't know.
That is a kind of, but it was like, oh, what is it, the Oprah light bulb moment kind of thing. For me, that's exactly what it was. That there was a whole nother life that was affected, and there's no way that any birth mother could relinquish without pain. And so whatever pain that I have had over my adoption, she also had it. And just that forgiveness comes with understanding. And then when you understand somebody else's situation and somebody else's pain, there's absolutely no way I could hold on to my anger anymore, because it was much bigger than me.
Yeah. So this is for me, this is the essence of why I do the podcast, is to explore the guests' insights in the hope that those insights catalyze insights within the listeners. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we live in this world where, here's the thing for you. If we look at healing from a physical perspective, it takes time, right?
Yes.
But this part of your healing was instantaneous.
Well, that's a good question. Was it instantaneous? Well, it was certainly eye-opening, Charles Heston style. It propelled me to continue searching. So it wasn't complete yet at that moment, but it certainly, by the time I was done speaking with all of the interviewees in my book, absolutely, then it was healed. So was it all of a sudden I jumped up and I could, be completely free? Probably not, but that was the eye-opening moment where it just completely changed my course down the road of healing, because I hadn't even stepped onto it yet.
Yeah. I think I oversimplified it, and whether I did that on purpose or not, I don't know. So it's like the steps on the healing journey, it sounds like, right?
Mm-hmm.
So looking back so far in the conversation, step one was reading the book and having your mind blown in a good way.
Yes.
And then the big step two was the insight that you had with the birth mother. But there've been there's been lots of insights all along the way. It hasn't been from one to, it hasn't been from wounded to whole in one step. It's been a series of steps, but some of those steps have been bigger than each other, and they have all been insight. The insights have led them. The changing of your mind. You didn't go out to change your mind. You went out to have a conversation. It wasn't like an affirmation thing. I must heal. You didn't look at your mirror, did you, and say, I must
no,
heal?
absolutely
right?
not.
The healing happened. It came naturally as part of the exploration.
Yes, as part of the process. I had no idea that I would find healing at the end of my book writing journey. I thought I was just gonna, Simon, I don't even know why I decided to start the book. I retired from accounting and decided that, I needed to write a book about adoption, but I don't know why I felt like I needed to do that, because before that I had really ignored it. But I just, for whatever reason, when you listen to that small voice, whatever it is, the universe, or if you're religious or whatever, and you hear that whisper, like, okay, you have a project, you have to do it. And I just started on this journey. And so in doing so, I researched adoption, and that's when I read The Primal Wound. So it wasn't like I read The Primal Wound and then I decided to start. I actually started the journey, then read The Primal Wound, and I refer to it a few times in my book. I do take some quotes from there, and it was just the whole building upon itself. With each interview, it would send me off in a new direction. And every person that contacted me to be in the book, I included their story. I didn't exclude anybody, because every single person, whether they were an adoptee or birth mother or birth father or adoptive parent, every single person had something to add.
Yeah.
Without question. I mean, everybody, I received all kinds of blessings from each interview and each person. It was almost spiritual, and the stories just came to me, and I just feel like it was supposed to be that way. And so for me, my book writing was my therapy, because I was able to look at everyone else's stories and my story and incorporate my story along with theirs.
Yeah. And as so often in life, it only makes sense looking back. It wasn't a plan going forward, right? So there's this idea.
Correct.
You know, if we look at how we are raised, you know, go through school, get the grades, go to college, get a job, you know, like everybody's it's mapping stuff out ahead of time, and that's the way that we do stuff. But the important stuff like this doesn't actually happen like that. It only makes sense when we look back. There was no 10-step plan ahead of time.
No.
There was just following the wisdom. And I really like what you said about the little voice, because I've had little voices as well, but the voice in my head tends to be negative rather than positive.
Okay.
So when it is when it says positive stuff to me, there's a little there's a bit of a disconnect, you know. So I remember going out for lunch with my wife, who I was working with at the time, and she was engaged to this guy, and he'd let her down again, and she'd said, "That's it." And the little voice in my head, this was 1993, the little voice in my head said, "Maybe there's a chance for you with Lynn," right? And that was completely out of the blue. And obviously I went with it, and you know, we've been together we've been married 25 years just last month. So and then another time it came to me was, the little voice came to me was 5 years ago, when I was driving back from the hospital after I'd heard the diagnosis that my dad had terminal cancer, and I was at a stoplight, a traffic light as we call them, and the little voice said to me, "You can handle this, Simon. You can get through this."
Mm.
And I largely did. I did actually have quite a few. Well, I had one meltdown with the communication in the hospital was quite poor, to say the least. And I had a meltdown about that for a few days, and until I saw that it would probably not be the best thing to do. You know, I saw the error of my ways. So yeah, the little voice, it's about the little voice, and the little voice is egging you on to do something good, and saying, "No, you've got this." So what other steps have there been along the healing journey? Maybe
What other steps?
Or insights?
Understanding that, well, certainly, you know, we talked about the birth mothers and understanding their pain came first, but with that comes the understanding that it wasn't my fault. It happened to me, but it wasn't my fault because I was a bad baby or whatever.
and it wasn't your fault, and you are not faulty.
Correct. It also helped me
There's a
heal
big one there,
because
listeners. I've never heard. I've never expressed it in that little precise way before.
oh, let's go. That I
Yeah.
am not faulty.
Not my fault, and we're not faulty. There's nothing wrong with us.
No, there isn't. There isn't. But then the epiphanies came along too, right? So if you think from that perspective, right? As a young child, you feel like it's your fault on some subconscious level. And then how do you act throughout your life? And what it did, it made me take a look at my life and understand that I allowed myself to be treated a certain way, like in certain work scenarios, or I allowed these things to happen to me because I probably on some subconscious level felt like I didn't have control. And so figuring out that I don't have to make certain choices, that I have more control than I thought I did, was really kind of what came out of that, right? Because if beneath you don't feel like you have control, on top you might act a certain way. And I'm pretty sure, going back to our original the beginning of the conversation about the anger gave me control. I was angry, but I had more control than I did about the shame over being adopted. And so, but that was really a false sense of security, having that sort of control. So stepping over into understanding that we're not faulty, I like it, that we're not faulty, then you realize, oh, I do have control over the rest of my life.
Yeah. So what do you think's wounded by the primal wound?
The soul. But it's not a fatal wound. And it certainly can heal. But certainly the soul, like who you are in your essence, I think, is wounded.
Oh. Yeah. We came up with one. I was debating this with another podcast guest last week, actually. And she said, yeah, the soul is wounded. And I said, is there a part of you, is there a part of us that is whole? And she said, yeah, spirit.
Oh, I like it. Okay. So she thinks they're different. They're two different
She thinks
things.
they're different.
Okay.
So my metaphor for this is a car, right? So a car that's been in a crash, a wreck. Car. What do you guys? We call it car crash. What do you guys call it in the
Car crash?
Yeah, you can
car crash. Both.
I think you use often use the word the wreck as well. I think of it. So the car is damaged. Oh yeah, you use this word fender bender, don't you?
Yeah, that's for a little wreck.
Is that a little bit? Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's how I see it, and this is a metaphor that's emerging for me. So yeah, so some of us have a fender bender. Some primal wounds, I talked about this yesterday. I think some primal wounds are like a paper cut. Some primal wounds are like a shark bite.
Yeah.
Some primal wounds are like a fender bender, and some are like a a total wreck, a write-off. Yeah. And the space inside the car is not touched. That's the spirit, because the spirit isn't a thing. Yeah, spirit's not a thing. So the roof is like our bodies are things. The bonnet, the bonnet of the car, the roof of the car is a thing. But as spirit, we're more like the space inside the car, and the space inside the car is not damaged by the impact.
Okay. I buy it.
You buy it? Okay.
I buy it. But I would even maybe add to that, if you look at, there are a few adoptees, they're definitely in the minority, that I really don't think they have the primal wound, but they do have maybe this yearning that they just don't realize that something might be amiss. Like if you look at the very first story in my book, it's kind of the story that we all wish we had. Like it's almost Disney-like, he finally found his birth mother and then they had a relationship and but what he did say was that he didn't know that something was missing. He just didn't know, because he had a normal life. He had a good childhood. He became successful in his career, but he didn't know that he needed to meet his birth mother.
Yeah.
But he did, and so it filled him more, and he had all kinds of cousins and relatives living nearby. He had no idea. And so his world expanded, and he also had a sister whose story did not turn out. She was adopted as well. It was not the Disney story. So even the people with the Disney stories realize that they are missing something later on, but it's not necessarily a wound. Maybe it's just a little scratch on the car that you're talking about. Just a little, yeah, because a paper cut's kind of painful, I think. But just a little scratch that it's not really noticeable.
So the way I see it at a hyperlogical level is that I don't see it as I don't use the soul word for some reason. It doesn't sit with me. Well, I guess it kind of sits with me, but it's not something that I would use that word.
Okay.
I say, well, I say that the primal wound hurt my feelings, but I'm not my feelings.
So when you say soul, you mean that it doesn't exist, or you don't like that word in the context that it's used?
Neither really. It's just not one that I would use. I'm just saying feelings aren't who I am. I'm separating myself, who I am, from how I feel. Okay. So we say I am stressed, but what we actually mean is I feel stressed. Yeah, so we get confused between how we feel and who we are.
Got it. So back to your scale, like I feel shame, but I am not shameful.
Yeah, or I am not. Yeah, I am not shameful, and I am not ashamed. So it's putting a it's creating a gap between how we feel, what we think, and who we are. It's disidentifying from our feelings, so that the distance between us means that we're not engulfed, we're not threatened. They can't engulf us. They don't define us. I'm not defined, you know, me and my trauma are separate. Me and my feelings are separate. I'm the space, you know, going back to the car metaphor, that I'm the space inside the cabin of the car, you know, where the passenger space. And I don't mind the silly furry dice that are hanging. Yeah, they don't.
As long as they don't smell bad, right?
Yeah, as long as well, I don't. Yeah, I don't care. No, I don't care how they smell.
Okay.
I don't care how they smell. Whereas most of my life I've spent trying to avoid the feelings. So you going back to the quote that we started with, allowing myself to look directly at my pain enabled me to unclench as the fire died down. So I would say, to paraphrase your sentence with what I just said, allowing myself to feel my pain. Yeah, allowing myself to feel my pain rather than push it away, suppress it, numb it, enabled me to unclench as the fire died down. So not being so bothered, not being bothered about the feelings that are going in inside me. Not being so bothered by my trauma. You know, we're making trauma less traumatic.
Yep.
There's trauma and there's trauma.
Yes.
Yeah. You feel the difference.
You have to. Yes, I do. But you know, when you look at it and you feel and you allow yourself to feel it, it takes the trauma down to a trauma.
Yeah.
It does. It takes it down because you know, look the monster in the eye. You looked at it and examined it and realized that, you know, it isn't who you are. You're right. Maybe that's what it was. You look at it fully and you realize all along you felt like that was a part of you, but it is a part of you, but it's not you. It doesn't define you. So yes, I like it.
Can I take that on? Can I take that metaphor on a bit?
Let's do it. Yep.
I'm getting goosebumps here, right? I'm holding my arm up to the Zoom. Can you see them? Is my camera good enough to use?
Actually, I can. Yes.
Yeah. So when I get goose pimples, you know, the hairs on my arms stand up. So the monster thing, brilliant. So we're lying in the bed.
Wait, so who's we? You and like,
like you're married, I'm married.
For okay. Who's with whom? Okay.
Yeah, are you feeling the love, ladies and gentlemen? I'm lying in bed.
Okay.
Okay, on my own. I'm scared. There's a monster under the bed. But instead of lying there, pulling the covers over my head, sticking my fingers in my ears and saying, La 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 la. I can't hear you, monster. La 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 la. I throw the covers back, look under the bed, and there's nothing there.
Mm. Mhm.
And then I'm not scared. It's not about the monster isn't scary. It's about the fact that there is no monster.
Ah. Well, aren't you brilliant, Simon?
Well, and as I'm realizing that, as I am and
Realizing how brilliant you are.
as I am basking in my brilliance,
Okay.
I'm realizing that the idea actually came from a mentor of mine, a guy called Michael Neal, and he has an epic video about this, an animated video, which I'm going to link to in the show notes. I'll send it to you after we've finished today, because I think you'll really enjoy it. I'm not going to try and explain it,
Okay.
Listeners, because I will not do it justice. But it's basically it's my inspiration for the monster story, and because it's told in like an animated cartoon way and a little bit more detail. It's beautiful. So yeah, it's called the Dragon. It's called the Dragon Story, and there's a link into the cartoon video on YouTube in the show notes. So I'm looking at time. Where's it gone? Time always flies, doesn't it? It flies when we're having this conversation.
It does.
So check out the show notes for links to Sunny's book and all the social media channels. And she's writing another book, and she's looking for more people to interview for that, aren't you?
I am. Thank you for that plug there, Simon.
Yeah.
Yes.
So get in touch with Sunny, and if you're interested in featuring in the new book. Oh, can I be in the new book?
Absolutely.
Okay. Cool.
Yes, I would love that. I would love to have more conversations with you. Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Okay, listeners, thank you very much for listening. Just two more questions for you, Sunny.
Yes.
First one is there something that you'd like to mention that I haven't afforded you the opportunity to do?
Oh my goodness. No, I feel like we've gotten right down to the essence of it. There's no fluff around here. It's just,
okay.
We got
Cool.
right down to it. Thank you.
And next question, does a name for this episode of the podcast pop into your head?
Looking at the monster.
Yeah. Looking at the trauma monster. looking at the monster. We'll see how we go.
Okay.
Thank you very much for listening, listeners, and thank you to Sunny, and we will speak to you very soon. Bye-bye.